In this episode of Ask Paul Kirtley, as well as me wearing a somewhat silly looking hat, we're going to be talking about Tinders for Flint and steel, shelter roofs being strong enough for snow, Smocks versus anoraks, where are the woods you can freely bushcraft in the UK, while camping in northwest England, being blinded by headlamps, and foundational bushcraft knowledge. Welcome to episode 46 of Ask Paul Kirtley, and the first Ask Paul Kirtley of 2017. So happy new year to you, happy new year. Hopefully you had a good festive season and a good new year, and you're looking to start the year with lots of energy. I'm out for a hike today. It's another cold day, and I seem to have mislaid my normal stripy brown woolly hat. It's in the pocket of a jacket somewhere, but this is a hat that I often take canoeing with me, but it does make me look like a bit of a what my Australian girlfriend Amanda would call a bit of a Gumby, but it's warm and I like it. So very good in the mountains, very good on a cold day on the side of a river when you've been canoeing as well, and it's a bit windy, but yeah, it does make you look a bit odd. But I like these mountain caps. Anyway, one thing I realised last week was that I had so much stuff to talk about, and there were so many questions, and there were a number of questions in my list that all started bushcraft this, bushcraft event, bushcraft course. I missed the question. I said I was going to talk about it in the pre-roll, and I didn't. And it's about bushcraft shows and events in 2017. And so I thought I'd better get that one in early, and it's the first episode of 2017 as well. I was going to do this one last time, so apologies if that was confusing. This is from Tinks Wright, and Tinks has been on one of my courses in the woods in Sussex. She's done our elementary course, and she very much enjoyed it. And I first met Tinks first met her in person as opposed to online at last year's Bushcraft show, at 2016 Bushcraft show. And Tinks' question is very much in that vein. Her question is, "Hi Paul, just thinking ahead to next year, or this year now, 2017, and wondered what shows you may be speaking at or recommended visiting. Last year we went to the Bushcraft magazine May Meet in Kent, which was a lovely small event which our kids loved, the Bushcraft and Survival magazine, so we could see you speak, and the Wilderness Gathering, which we ran children's workshops at. Any others that you know of that are family friendly that you can recommend or may be at? Thanks again, and hope to be on the ASKPAULKIRTLEY course later this year." I think you've kind of got the main UK ones covered. You know, there are three bushcraft publications in the UK. Bushcraft and Survival Skills magazine, which organised the Bushcraft show, and there is the small Bushcraft magazine, which have a small event which you talked about. You can find them online, and I've heard good things about that event. The people involved are very, very nice. I've never been to that one myself, although I know some of the people who were involved in that, and they're good people. And then there's also the Wilderness Gathering, which of course garners a lot of attention. It's not one that I have to be honest, I've never been to the Wilderness Gathering, and the reason I've never been to the Wilderness Gathering is, even though Roger Harrington's contacted me a few times about going, and a lot of people that work in the industry, every year they ask me if I'm going, it always comes at a really difficult time for me. I'm busy teaching all summer, and in particular in July and August, which isn't just good summer months to be teaching. There's lots going on with trees and plants out in the woods in terms of foraging and in terms of using different natural resources. It's also the school holidays, so there's a lot of people who are on holiday at that time of year, particularly teachers, as well as people that are involved in university education who have more time in the summer. So it's a very busy time for me over the summer, and then I'm often doing canoe trips in Canada in September. So trying to squeeze the wilderness gathering in between for me is nigh on impossible, and it has been for the last decade. So unfortunately, I've never been to the wilderness gathering. Lots of people I know do go and they really enjoy it. My friend Danny Reed, who has the Bushcraft Journal that I write for as well, they have a nice stall there. So there's lots to do there, and I would recommend it, just on the basis of the people who go and what you can do there. But I've never been myself, and I won't be there this year, unfortunately. I will be at the Bushcraft show at the end of May. Frontier Bushcraft, my company, are a main sponsor of the Bushcraft show this year. I'll be doing some main stage talks. There may be a live Ask Paul Kirtley in there somewhere as well, so keep your eye out for that. We're going to have a stall, we're going to do some demos. Spoons is going to be there with me and a few of the other gang from Frontier, and we're also hoping to have Ray Goodwin along with us as well. Exactly what he's going to be doing, we're not quite sure yet. Maybe some sessions on the lake, and probably a talk on the main stage as well, but we'll all be there. So that's a good spot to come and see us if you want to. Sandra, as well as everybody else, Tinks. In terms of other ones, I am going to the winter bushcraft meet in Holland, in the Netherlands, very, very soon, in January. I've not been to that one before, but looking forward to that, looking forward to meeting everybody there. I know a lot of people from the Netherlands follow this show and follow my blog, so I'm looking forward to meeting many of you there. And then the other event that I'll be going to this year is the Bushcraft Festival in Sweden. I went to the inaugural one last year. I was guest speaker at the inaugural Bushcraft Festival, and I'll be going again, and that's in the late summer. I'll be going to that one. So some good events coming up. The only UK event that I'm going to is the Bushcraft show, smack bang in the middle of the year, end of May. It's a good time for me. It's in between our sort of busy Easter period, April, and the May bank holiday, the early May bank holiday. That period in the spring is normally busy for us, and then kind of busy June, July, August, September, October with a lot of other things that we do. So Bushcraft show always works well for us, and as I say, we're a main sponsor of that this year, and I'd recommend you to come and say hi if you can. But if anybody has any other events, local events or country fairs, if there are country fairs that you think are particularly well suited to people who are interested in bushcraft or woodcraft or country crafts, Bodger's Ball is a good one that people go to, a green woodworking fair, if you like. I don't know how kid friendly it is. There's a fair amount of sharp tools and ale drinking and cider drinking and things that go on, but it's a good event, and there's a lot of very skillful people there. So if anybody has any ideas of other events around the subject or skill sets, put them in the comments below. You know, it isn't just about my knowledge here. There's a ton of you out there who know useful things and have got lots of information that you can share with other people that watch these and listen to these. So whether you're watching on YouTube, leave comments underneath. Whether you're watching on my blog or listening via my blog, leave comments underneath and share other good events, preferably with a link. And if it doesn't post immediately, sometimes when you post comments on my blog with a link in them, and on YouTube as well for that matter, for some reason the system thinks it's spam and it gets held in a moderation queue. Just put it on there anyway. If it doesn't appear immediately, I will find it in the moderation queue at some point and post it if it's a genuine link. Cool. Right, let's get on with the questions. I'm at the end of a walk today. It's quite cold, and we're going to be losing the light soon, so I may have to switch on to infrared, but I'll try and avoid that. I'm going to run through these questions quickly. Question is about Tinders for flint and steel. Hi Paul, my first question of Ask Paul Kirtley, so hopefully you will fit it in one day, and this is from Ian Facey. I bought a Hudson's Bay fire kit and love it. I've practiced with char cloth and various other stuff including cramp balls. My question to you is, when I have no char cloth or cramp balls, I do not seem to be able to get a fire with the flint and steel. What would you suggest when out in the field? Cramp balls only seem to work straight off the tree at certain times. Anyway, many thanks, Paul, for your from your biggest fan, the Facemeister. You do a great job, and I'm sure that many like me are thankful for all your hard work. Just thinking, I'm going to bring my microphone, so apologies for the scrumpling here. I put my big jacket over the top and didn't move my microphone, so apologies if it's been muffled up to this point. It shouldn't be now. I've moved my microphone out. So Face's question, he's used char cloth, he's used cramp balls, what else can you use with flint and steel? Well, that does pose a very good question about flint and steel. Flint and steel sparks are, compared to a modern fire steel, a ferro rod, they're cooler and they're smaller typically. And so the range of things that you can light with them is more limited than the range of things that you can light with a modern ferro rod. That said, they were a very reliable means of lighting fire that people carried with them on trips and used in their homes. But what you generally need to do is prepare some material when you've got your first fire. Prepare some material for your next fire. There are not so many materials that you can just go and get from nature, and that's the essence of your question. There aren't so many. That's what's given rise to your question, and you're right, there aren't so many that you can just go and get. Cramp balls, when you break them off, typically dead ash, you break them off. If they feel really light, like expanded polystyrene, they're quite dry, there's not a lot of moisture in there, and they may well light straight away. If they've got any moisture in them, which they often have, they'll feel heavier than that, and you'll need to wait for them to dry out. And so that probably explains the variability in your ability to light them with a flint and steel. Char cloth is very good, but remember what char cloth is. Char cloth is a charred plant material. The cloths that work are cotton, linen, silk, although I don't know many people who use silk, but silk does work. I typically use old tea towels or old jeans, old t-shirts, those sorts of things that you would be throwing out otherwise. They've got holes in them, or smelly and knackered and what have you. They make really good char cloth. But it's a charred plant fibre, and so that's the kind of key to what you're doing there, is that you've got a charred plant fibre that you're then dropping a spark into, that will then rekindle, and you can grow as a small ember, and then you can add it to something else. We've talked a lot, we talked in the last episode about fibrous materials for taking bow drill embers, the same skill set. Put it in there, blow it into flame. So what works well, any plant material that you can char. So if you've got a little brass tin with your fire lighting kit, that's what the tin is partly for, that you set fire to some plant materials, you pop it in, you snuff it out, you exclude the oxygen, you get some charred material, and on the edges of it where it's charred you can drop it, and the tin helps keep it free from moisture as well, because moisture really is, as you know with your char cloth, if it soaks up too much moisture it's not going to work very well. So moisture is sort of the enemy. Keep it sealed from moisture, then drop a spark into that charred material, it starts smouldering, you take it to your tinder bundle, you get your next fire going, and so on and so forth. So things like cattail seed heads, some of the downy seed heads work well. Fibrous plant materials that are dry, that you can char without completely obliterating as soon as they're on fire. Lots of different materials. Once you think of it in those terms, there's lots of things that you can start to use. But you have to get into that routine of take something with you when you first go, light your fire with that, and then you've then got to take something else in nature and char it, and then take that with you for your next fire. And that was typically how it was used. And the tinder, it's not something that's going to burst into flames, it's just something that's going to catch and hold that spark as a small ember, which you can then grow and blow into flames using other materials that you get from around you in nature. Dried grass, bracken, what did we talk about last time? Goosegrass, cleavers, sticky willies, whatever you want to call it. I think I just heard a kingfisher, which is nice. Shelter roof strong enough for snow. This is from Charles in Canada, and he says, "Hey Paul, honestly I don't know if you can even answer this question." Well, thanks for sending it anyway. Me and a friend of mine are building a long-term shelter here in Canada. We get a lot of snow in the winter, but this is the primary use for the shelter, winter camping. We started it about a week ago, but in that time my friend went out to our location while I was at work and put up the third wall. The problem is he made the wall the same height as all the others. He worked very hard on it and I don't want to tear it down. Would a flat roof cause an issue with snow? We average about 1.5 to 2.5 meters of snow in the winter, but I don't think we will get that much in our location. Do you have any tips in how we can make it strong enough to hold at least a meter? It's about 4 meters wide and 6 meters long. Well, I think a flat roof might be a problem. Flat roofs are generally a problem if you put too much weight on them. But structurally it's going to be a problem. I think it's also going to be a problem when the snow comes to melt, because the water is just going to drip through the roof, and that's going to make the inside of that shelter very damp, as opposed to having a sloping roof where if you build it thick enough, even though the material is going to be dripping through it, by the time it gets to the inside it's going to be quite low down. So that's going to be part of your issue. Strength wise, that's just it's a bit of a how long is a piece of string question, because I don't know the materials you're using, I don't know the diameters, I don't know the strengths of the woods that you're using, because I don't know which woods you're using. But what I would say is snow is made of water. And this isn't meant to be patronizing, it's just a logical way of thinking about it. Snow is made of water. A cubic meter of water is 1,000 litres, and a litre of water weighs a kilo. So a cubic meter of water weighs 1 metric ton. Snow, if you know anything about snow, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but in terms of, say, knowledge of snow from the mountains and avalanches and how much snow weighs, depending on the density of the snow, so depending on how much air it's got in it, depending on how much water's soaked into it, snow is going to weigh between something like 250, 300 kilograms per cubic meter to maybe 600 or 700 kilograms per cubic meter. So you can, if you know the depth of snow that you've got, say you reckon 1.5 to 2.5, but you don't think you'll get that much. Say you only got a meter, yeah, and then your roof is 4 by 6, that's 24 meters. 24 meters by a meter thick, so that's 24 cubic meters. And say you had a medium density of snow on the top, so say it weighed 500 kilograms per cubic meter, you're going to have 12 tons of snow on top of that shelter. Is it going to be strong enough to hold 12 tons? That's the question you're asking. I don't know, because I haven't seen your shelter, but those are the sort of masses that you're playing with. Clearly, if you've just got it propped up at the side and you've got cross beams going across that, it's going to be weakest in the middle, it's going to bow, it may then just collapse, it may bow in the middle and just all fall in. You know, you asked this question back in October, you've probably got snow on it, you probably know the answer to this now, or you maybe have changed it, but just as a general principle, sloping roofs are good for snow because you don't get as much snow sitting on top. And sloping roofs are good when the snow comes to melt, or it rains, or you get sleet, or before it snows properly, because then you don't get wet in the shelter. So those are some of my thoughts there. Part of it's a mathematical structural engineering problem, and part of it is just a thinking about what happens either side of when you get the snow. You're going to get rain and sleet, and then you're going to get snow, and then you're going to get meltwater in the spring. And if you want it to be a long-term shelter, you need it to be able to cope with all of those different circumstances. Smocks versus anoraks. Question from Brian Legat. Hi Brian, good to hear from you. Hi Paul. First, as usual, thank you for your content and generosity in providing it. Well, as always, Brian, you're very, very welcome. And Brian's another one who's done some of my online training as well and found it very beneficial. At the time of writing, I've just listened to episode 41 of Ask Paul Kirtley and would like to hear your thoughts your thoughts on your preference between half zip smock style jackets and full zip ones. Personally, I've always favoured smocks, thinking that they are more windproof, waterproof, but then do find them awkward to get on and off, especially when the pockets are full. Does your experience suggest that there is a benefit of one style over another? Thanks, Brian. Well, we talked about putting stuff in jacket pockets versus putting things elsewhere, sort of, in the previous episode. I do like to have a few things in jacket pockets, particularly if it's weather where you're wearing a jacket all the time, you know, winter, windy conditions, in the woods to protect warm layers. You know, a few things in jacket pockets are good. I don't like to stuff my jacket pockets with things, other than maybe some, you know, dumping a load of birch bark in for as and when I see it as I'm wandering around. But I think your question is more about zips and how far they zip down. I think the big advantage to something which doesn't zip all the way down is that if the zip breaks, you then are just not open to the elements. And that's really, really important in circumstances where that could mean life or death. That's really important in cold conditions. Personally, when I'm in significantly sub-zero, so you know, in the northern forest in winter, I like to have a over the head smock. I like one that's quite long, or that can be quite long, but that can also be bloused up a bit. And it has, as well as a zip, it has some Velcro or other toggle fastening, so that even if the zip is broken or jams or there's some other problem with it, that I can still close it up reasonably well, without being open to the elements and open to snow coming in and cold coming in and all of those sorts of things. So I think that's the major advantage, is that it's not as dependent upon the zip to stay closed, particularly if you've got some secondary closing up towards the top. Zips will break from time to time. Modern zips are pretty good. I rarely have zips break, but they do sometimes break. So that's always an issue. If you've got a jacket that is dependent upon giving you any sort of seal against the weather, and it's entirely dependent upon the zip, that's always an issue. So even just having a Velcro bit, you know, pressed it at the bottom, pressed it at the top, and Velcro over, that can be enough to keep it reasonably well closed, as long as you're not putting a lot of stress on it. That and a zip can be fine, but if it's just a zip and you really, really need to rely on it, maybe go for a half zip smock rather than something else. The other thing with smocks, where the zips don't go all the way down, just as an afterthought, back to pockets, is that they do allow kind of more kangaroo style pockets, which might be useful for putting a map in. You might have hand warmer pockets that you can bring your hands in together. My winter smock, the one that Ian and I had custom made by Snow Sled before Snow Sled stopped making Ventile clothing, that smock has pockets that you can put your hands in from the outside, but you can also put your hands in from the inside. There's a compartment in the middle and your hands can go all the way through. There's like little pockets in there for a compass and those sorts of bits and pieces as well, so they don't get lost in amongst other things. But you can put mittens in, you can put your hands in from the outside, you can pull your hands in through the sleeves and the zips on the inside, and you can put your hands, get to items from the inside of your clothing as well. So that's quite handy. When the zip on the front, the closure zip, doesn't go all the way down, you've got more to play with here in terms of pocket arrangements and compartments as well, which can be handy in different circumstances. Right, it is getting dark. Okay, question from who's this from? Vladimir. Vladimir asks, and this is about woods for bushcraft activities in the UK. So Vladimir asks, "Hi Paul, thank you for doing your job on sharing and educating people like me who have a passion for bushcraft and nature but lacking the knowledge and skill. My question is about getting into bushcraft or hiking and camping in the UK. I've read your article about gaining an access to the land and similar issues. I will link it here in the top of YouTube, and I'll link it in the show notes on my blog as well. Go and find Ask Paul Kirtley episode 46 for a link through to the article. The article is on my blog. How to find a place to practice bushcraft in the UK is what it's called, and that's the article I think that Vladimir is referring to. So he says, I've read your article about gaining an access to the land and similar issues. Unfortunately, it wasn't very helpful in my case. And I feel if you were able to give me and others some advice on that and share your experience, I would be grateful. Well, I did, Vladimir, in that article. That was my advice. But anyway, basically, all I want to do outdoors is to practice making a fire and a shelter, navigation, and some other basic skills, not including hunting, trapping, or fishing. I live in London. Is there in UK any woods to freely do this kind of activities, and who I can contact to gain some information or permission if it is a national park? The fact that I need a landowner's permission in most cases just makes it impossible, because I have no idea how to track him. And as you said in your article, almost certainly he will just say no. Well, I didn't quite say that in my article. I'll come back to that. There are thousands of people who go hiking and bushcrafting, and I want to be part of them. Please, Paul, if you could give some advice on that or refer me to a source which could be helpful, I'll be very thankful. Well, I'm sorry you didn't find that article as useful as you might have done, but I can't change the law in the UK. The law in the UK is the law in the UK. And in England and Wales, to have a fire, you need landowner's permission. I didn't just make that up. There isn't a way of circumventing it. You need the permission, either granted personally or granted because it's a campsite that allows fires. So there are some campgrounds that you can go to and have a fire. It might be in a fire pit, but you can have a fire. Those places do exist, and you can search for them on the internet. But the advice, you're asking me for my advice. I wrote 3,000 word article on that, and I think you probably need to go and read it again, because it wasn't blanket advice for people who want to go and do everything. Yeah. I think maybe you've misinterpreted it, that I said you need landowner's permission to do all of the things. No, it's actually quite, it gives you suggestions on every level about things that you can do without permission. So you can forage for berries without permission. You talk about wanting to practice your navigation. Anywhere you're allowed to walk in the UK, public rights of way, open access land, all those places, you can go and practice your navigation skills. In terms of camping, the rules on camping are a little bit of a grey area. The law, strictly speaking, in England and Wales says that you can't, the right to roam doesn't extend to, even in areas where there is a right to roam, doesn't extend to camping. Again, you should have landowner's permission. That said, in upland areas, so areas in the hills, so places like the Lake District, places like North Wales, places like the Peak District, many of the upland areas in the UK, you can camp, particularly if it's just for a night, and the landowner doesn't really mind. In general, that's generally the rule. In Scotland, it's different. In Scotland, you have the right to camp as well as the right to roam, as long as you're not interfering with economic or economic activities. You're damaging crops in a field or impinging on somebody's privacy, for example. You don't be camping in somebody's back garden. But as long as you're not doing those sorts of things, you can camp. So yes, you can go and walk and camp and hike in many places right across the UK, whether you're in England, Wales or Scotland. And that advice is in that article, Vladimir. So that I've already given you that advice. In terms of fires, you need landowner's permission in England and Wales. In Scotland, you don't. But some of them, if there's a bylaw, like in the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park now, you can't camp, you can't have fires because they've had trouble with people leaving a mess. And there's lots of political stuff going on there, which I've talked about before. We're not going to go into here. But most places you can have a fire, but some landowners will take a dim view of it because you put their land at risk. If you're camping in an ancient Caledonian pine forest and you're having a fire on peaty soil that's got Scots pine roots in it, that you're putting that forest at risk, and they may well come and ask you to put it out of respect for the forest because it's dangerous, just in the same way as if you go to a national park in Canada, and while normally you might be able to have a fire, if they put a fire ban on, you shouldn't have a fire. That's the rules. So the rules, they are somewhat varied, but at the end of the day, I can't change the law. There aren't these vast swathes of places where you can just go and do what you like in terms of having fires. Now, you did mention there are other people, there are the hikers and there are the bushcrafters that go and do these things, and you want to be part of that. Well, maybe be part of that then. If you go to a forum like Bushcraft UK, which has existed for a long time, it existed before any bushcraft groups on Facebook. It existed before Facebook, but there another option is get involved with an online community of other people that go and they have access to land as a group, maybe even if not necessarily individually. They've negotiated access. See if you can befriend them. Go along to a meeting, a group camp, and you can access land that way and with a group of like-minded people. That's another thing that is very, very easy to do, and I know many people who have done that, and I've met many people who've come on courses with me who are involved in those groups. I've been invited by some groups to go and do weekend courses for them at their venue to show them what resources are available at the venue that they use, which might be a scout camping ground or another piece of private land that they've negotiated access to. It is possible. It's about how much effort that you want to put into. That I do not have some secret places that you can go to that I'm not telling you about that are available to everybody to go and use. They don't exist. You have to become part of a group that has access, or you have to negotiate access yourself if you want to do certain things. Other things you don't need to. And that article that I wrote delineates what things you need landowners permission for and what things you don't need landowners permission for. Fires, you need landowners permission. Unearthing plants, so digging up roots and what have you, as opposed to picking berries and leaves, you need landowners permission. Hunting and trapping and whatnot, yes, you need landowners permission. You also need to stay within the law. You said you don't want to do that, that's fine. But even so, some of the things you want to do, you need landowners permission. I can't magic those things away. There is not some magic secret way around that. That's the law. Some landowners are going to be very happy for you to be there because you're going to help look after their woodland. So I don't think you're right in saying that it's not possible, it's going to be near impossible. I certainly didn't say that in my article, because what I said was, if you just turn up on there's a squirrel running through the trees above me there. What I said in the article is, if you just turn up on somebody's doorstep and ask, can you go and light fires in their woods, they may well say no. Just in the same way as if you turned up on somebody's doorstep and said, can I light a fire in your back garden? They don't know who you are, they don't know if they can trust you, they don't know how responsible you're going to be, and they've got lots of other things on their mind, so they'll probably just say no because it's easier. But if you're willing to put in the effort to build a relationship, you can. Now, that may or may not be worth the effort for you, but there are some case studies that I put in that article of a couple of different people, Mark and Mo, both got access to an area of woodland for their personal use under different circumstances, but I included those as case studies to give you an idea that it is entirely possible for you to do that on a personal level, not just on a group level. So if you're willing to put in the effort to find somewhere that you want to personally go, that you can have private for yourself without anybody else around, you can do that. If you want to become a member of a group that's got access to areas where you can go and practice bushcraft skills, you can do that. All of those things are possible, but they do involve you actually putting some effort in, and there isn't just some register or list of places you can go and do what you want. It doesn't exist. Okay, it's getting dark. Next question. This is from Buzz Lightbeer. Good name. Via Twitter, quick question. Your views on wild camping in northwest England. I live in an area with few wooded areas unless I want to go to Wales or the lakes. I'm going to make an assumption about what the question is here. What do I think about wild camping? Well, you've heard the previous question, the answer to the previous question, and it's an extension of that really. Upland areas, you can typically in northwest England especially, whether Cumbria is in northwest England as far as I'm concerned. So Cumbria, lakes, upland areas, you shouldn't have any trouble camping, wild camping in most places there. Wales, again, upland areas, lots of nice areas to camp there. In terms of having fires though, that's where you're going to come into difficulty, and again you're probably going to need to speak to a landowner if you want to do it legally. I can't say anything other than that because that's just a fact. Can you find a quiet spot to go and do it without anybody noticing? Maybe, but then again, do you want to be looking over your shoulder the whole time in case a gamekeeper or a landowner is going to come and take issue with what you're doing? It depends on the type of experience you want to have. So the law in England and Wales is, strictly speaking, you need landowners' permission to camp. Strictly speaking, you need landowners' permission for fires. In upland areas, people will probably turn a blind eye to you camping. They probably won't turn a blind eye to you having a fire. So it depends on exactly the type of camping experience you want to have, how much hassle you want to put yourself at the potential end of. That's all I can say. If you've got a more specific question, I think that's what you're getting at, but you know, I'm reading it into a tweet which was a bit ambiguous. If you've got a more specific question, drop me another line and I'm happy to follow up with another answer. Now that this is going to be quite funny because my leg has gone to sleep and I need to turn the infrared on my camera. So as I stumble towards the camera, find the button. Where is it? There we go. I'm getting better at that. Okay. Yeah, pins and needles in my leg. Right, okay. Being blinded by headlamps. Tobias Fisher. I have a question concerning headlamps. In an article, you did a great job of explaining what's important. Now, before I go and buy myself one, there is another thing I'd really like to know. Is it normal to get blinded by the headlight you are wearing? No. I found a cheap one somewhere at home, and while all those white LEDs definitely produce a nice white spot on the ground, I always end up seeing less than with the lights turned off, at least in a full moon night. Yeah, well, a full moon night, you don't need a headlamp anyway. Today I tried to cut out a round piece of red foil and put it behind the lens. What did indeed look pretty cool, but unfortunately it subtracted way too much light and didn't even reach the floor anymore. So my question is, do you know this effect of getting totally blinded by the white light, and would be more expensive model help? I take it you mean, let me just be clear, you're not being blinded directly by it being here and it just not being well shielded, because I have seen some lights where there is so much light coming this way that you end up kind of almost being blinded by your own light directly. I think what you mean is that the light on the ground is so bright that then is ruining your vision for seeing anything else. But you need to look with the light. Yeah, if you turn a headlight on in the dark and then turn it off again, you're going to lose your night vision, and it will take 30 minutes at least to come back again. So if that's what you're talking about, yes, it is completely normal for your vision to be, your night vision to be impaired as soon as you turn a bright light on. And that is one of the issues that I have with people turning lights on too early when we're out in the woods, because your eyes will naturally adjust to the falling light, as mine have done here. I noticed on the camera it was struggling to see me, whereas I was seeing around me okay, and that's why I turned the infrared lamp on. My eyes are adjusting to the light and I can still see, not as well as in daylight, but I can. But whereas if I turn a bright light on and then off again, I'm not going to be able to see as well. So that's an important thing to understand. But if you're finding the light too bright just to even see when you're looking at something and you've got it on your head, what you should do is get a lamp where you've got an adjustable beam where you can turn it down. The one that I like, the one that I use, the Surefire lamp that I use, that I'll link in the article, where I talked about that's got a continuously adjustable beam. So from just slightly on to full brightness, it's a continuous beam. I like that because I can adjust it to exactly the brightness that I want, whether I'm reading close up, whether I'm looking at something medium distance, or whether I want a powerful beam for looking further. That's good, but equally a lot of lamps have 3 settings at least. You know, the cheaper lamps, like, you know, some of the Petzl lamps, you turn it on, you press it again and it goes brighter, you press it again, it goes brighter still, you press it again and it goes back to the first setting. That should give you enough flexibility, particularly if you're on a budget, to get the brightness that you want. So yes, and if you want to then maybe, if you think that even on the lightest, the least bright setting, it's going to be not very conducive to you seeing otherwise, get one with a flip up filter, red filter. You can get some with a flip up red filter that will make it less bright, but it also means it won't impair your vision as much. The other little trick that you can do is when you turn a lamp on, is close one of your eyes, and you can experiment with whether or not you feel better keeping your dominant eye closed or your non-dominant eye closed. But one thing you can do is really clamp shut one of your eyes while you turn your headlamp on, look at what you're looking at, turn your headlamp off, and then open your eye, and then you're still going to have reasonable night vision in the eye that you kept closed. That's another trick that I use when I'm out and about in the woods. So maybe sometimes I have to look at a map in the dark, even with a red filter on. I'm going to damage my night vision a little bit. I'll close one of my eyes quite hard, and then I can still see once I turn my light off. So hopefully those comments are helpful. If I completely misunderstood your question, let me know. All right, this is the last question, and this is via Instagram, and this is from Gavin Henry. Good to hear from you, Gavin. So Gavin has sent me an image of an excerpt from a paper, I think, with a chart in it. And his question is, applying invest most in knowledge that is durable, so that's in inverted commas, invest most in knowledge that is durable from software engineering for bushcraft. What areas would you recommend for long-term benefit as a foundation of bushcraft knowledge versus knowledge that needs continually updating? And he's put a link through there to the essay that he's quoting from or referring to by Ben Northrop, bennorthrop.com, essays, reflections of an old programmer. And so basically he's looking at this article, looking at the advice for investing in knowledge which is durable, and there is a chart there of knowledge retention at different stages of progression in a knowledge base or a skill set. Well, I've talked about my skills list before. I think that's a good place to start. I linked that up in the previous episode. I'll link it up here again. That was part of my Bushcraft show presentation last year, where people could download that skills list, 15-page document with bulleted list. That is a core list that I think you can work on. Some things are more durable than others. Understanding how to light fires, recognizing the right sort of resources. Once you've got that down, you've got that down. Other skills in bushcraft, such as tracking. Tracking is that is a perishable skill. It takes you a while to get into it, and it does diminish if you don't practice it. But then, of course, there's a question of how long it takes you to get up the curve with something in the first place, and then how long it takes you to replenish that if you don't practice it for a while. And most of these skills, even if they are somewhat perishable, they don't take a huge amount to get you back up the curve, and the more time you practice them, the quicker you'll get back up the curve. But I think that skills list is a core list of practical hard skills mainly. I think one of the things that takes time is tree and plant identification. And I would recommend that you start that early and just chip away at it and layer on and layer on and layer on each year, rather than suddenly going, right, this year I'm going to learn everything there is to know about tree and plant identification, because you'll get into a state of overwhelm. Your memory doesn't work like that. You're much better off chipping away at it, chipping away at it, chipping away at it, layering on and reinforcing when you go out, through the year, even if it's just out walking the dog, having a look at what's in your locale, go back, refer to some guidebooks, go back out again, see if you can recognize them the next time, and just layer up on top, on top, on top. And then once you've got that level of knowledge, it's a little bit like learning to use a language. If you're using it all the time, then you'll remember it. And so if you're out and about and you can recognize the local trees and plants, then every time you go out for a walk with your dog or walk with your kids, or walk into the bus stop and you see something, you can go, yep, that's birch, that's Norway spruce, that's a peduncular oak, that's a common beech, that's common ash, that's rowan, that's all of these common trees that you're going to see. Learn those, and then you can reinforce. But if you try and learn everything in 1 year, particularly if it's stuff that isn't even in your area, might be just somewhere where you go and visit occasionally, you're not going to get as far in the long run. So I would say core skills, tree and plant ID is important. Starting to learn some animal tracks and sign is good. Spending time looking at nature. So if you see an animal, you see a bird in an area where it may have left some tracks or sign, go and see where it was. See if you can link what you saw of the activity, of the actions of the animal or the bird, whether it's taking off from snow or landing in the sand next to the water, or moving around on the water's edge, or whatever it is, somewhere where there's going to be a track trap, where they've left a track, a clear print ID of their footprint. Go and have a look, and then you link that knowledge, that identification of the species with the identification of the actual track. And the thing is, you can try and force that. You can just go, right, okay, I'm going to spend 2 weeks out in the wilds, trying to see as much as I can, and you will learn a lot from that. But some of those circumstances, some of those encounters with wildlife are by chance, and yes, you can increase the chances of them happening by spending more time out in a given period, but also just going out regularly at different times of the year, you're going to increase your chances of having those chance encounters. When maybe 1 week an animal wasn't in the area, you could have spent all week there and it wasn't there. The next week it maybe was in the area, or undertaking certain activities, certain feeding activities at certain types of the year, mating activities at certain types of the year. Sometimes animals are more bold than others. Sometimes they're trying to distract you from their young. The more time out throughout the year you spend. So I would say core skills, hard skills, look at my skills list. And then in terms of knowledge of your environment, just chip away at it, but do it in a fairly structured way of, I wonder what this is. Be inquisitive, try and identify it, use field guides, learn as much as you can about identifying what's around you in terms of plants, trees, animals, fungi, birds, fish, insects. Just learn to be inquisitive, learn to identify things, learn to be able to interpret your environment, and then you're linking the hard skills with the resources and the environment, and that takes time, and it is perishable to an extent, but equally you get the core things in place, and then you can reinforce on a regular basis, just like using a language on a daily basis. It keeps it in mind. So those are my thoughts, but get that skills list as a starting point. All right, that brings us to the end, I think. Let me just double check I haven't missed one this time like I missed one last time. But I think that brings us to the end. Tinders, shelters, roofs, smocks versus anoraks, woods, you can bushcraft in the UK, wild camping in northwest England, being blinded by headlamps, foundational bushcraft knowledge, and bushcraft shows and events we did at the beginning. That was the one I missed last time. So everything covered this time, and thanks for your attention. Do keep following me on Instagram. People have been asking about my online trainings. The tree and plant course will be opening fairly soon. If you are not on my mailing list, paulkirtley.co.uk, sign up to any of the main mailing list forms. There's one in the top right hand corner of pretty much every page on my website, and there are some popovers which appear occasionally. Sign up to that, onto my mailing list. When that course is open and when other courses are open, I will send out the details. There's no obligation. Basically all I do is I send out an email saying, if you're interested in this, click this link and leave me your email there, contact details there, and I'll let you know when it's open. And there's no obligation. It's really just a case of making sure the right people get the right information. I don't want to spam everybody all the time with everything. That's why I ask you to go to certain places and state your interest. It's not that I'm trying to get you to make some sort of commitment that you don't otherwise want to make. It's just that I want to send you the information that you want, and Dave the information that he wants, and Sandra the information that she wants, and that's what all those email systems are for. So I try and do that as much as possible. So get on my main mailing list, where you'll get all the updates to my blogs, including the Ask Paul Kirtleys when they come out, including other useful information. A lot of the questions that get asked on Ask Paul Kirtley refer to material that's on my blog, so it's all useful stuff to have access to. I'd basically send out an email when there's something new on there, and maybe give a bit more context about it, or a bit more information about it than you get just from the article. So it's useful being on that mailing list. And then occasionally, when I do have something that I want to offer that is paid, I'll send one email out that says, if you're interested, go over here, let me know, and then I'll send you that information. And if you don't go over there and don't say you're interested, you won't get it. So I'm not bothering people that it's not the right time for, or it's not the right program for. As I said in the previous episode, all of these things come together in a mesh to get you to where you want to be. There are some core skills which I think most people would benefit from learning if they're going to be involved in bushcraft at all. And then there are other areas which you can extend into depending on your level of interest, the amount of time you've got available, how you want to apply it, and where you want to take the skills ultimately. And whether that's as a serious leisure interest or a professional interest, there's lots and lots of different resources that I've got available to you. So starting point is get on my mailing list at paulkirtley.co.uk, and then put your hand up for the things that you're interested in addition to that, and I'll make sure that I get them to you, and you get the stuff that you need to take you further up the curve in your own bushcraft journey. All right, well, it's getting pretty dark here now, but it's fun to finish in the dark. I'll go and finish the rest of my walk. I've got a few fields to walk over, and once I get out the woods, looks like a nice sunset in the background. Evening star is already out there, I can see. So I'm looking forward to the rest of my walk, and I will leave you to the rest of your day. And great to be starting the year with another Ask Paul Kirtley, and I will see you again soon. Take care and enjoy the outdoors. Bye.